Someone finally hit me with a tough question about sobriety, but I think my answer is something that everyone should listen to. Hi, this is Chris with the Rewired Soul, where we talk about the problem, but we focus on the solution. And this is Ask an Addict. So I'm both excited and nervous to take on this question. See, for my videos so far, I've been kind of taking those like soft underhand pitches, and I've been really answering questions or focusing on topics that I can look and back up with science and statistics and things like that. And this is a very real question. This is a question that I get over and over and over in a bunch of different contexts, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. But these are the questions that I love. I love them the most, and I really appreciate this viewer who asked this question, because that's exactly what I started this series for. I hope this makes you want to ask me more questions. So, this question comes from one of our viewers. I have another question. Shocker, LOL. Okay, first off, let me just say this. I love when you have questions. There is no such thing as a bad question. Like, ask me all of the questions. So, first I need to explain my situation. I was raised and eventually adopted by my grandparents because my biologic parents were teens when I was born. They raised me in a wonderful, God-fearing home, and I was never subjected to any kind of drugs or ever saw abuse between them or even yelling. I found out my biological mother suffered from mental illness. Both of my biological parents were addicts at some point. That being said, my parents had no clue about addiction or mental illness because their generation was such that they didn't talk about such things and coped by sweeping things under the rug. My mother, 71 years old, is an enabler. The reason it's so important, in my opinion, for her to understand my depression and my addiction is because she doesn't realize how much she's hurting me when she says, "It won't hurt you to take a little something to sleep." Or my dad's big on, "You're being a baby, suck it up." I need her to understand she's a trigger for me. Not only that, but my sister and a couple more family members get prescribed narcotics, so it's easier for me to relapse if I'm in the wrong situation. I completely see your point as to why it shouldn't be so important for me to try to make people understand my issue, but with family, I can't logically cut my elder parents off because of an issue they don't realize they're doing. I want to educate my mother more on enabling, but I don't want to insult her. Does your video still ring true in this situation? I should mention also that my aging parents are my neighbors, so contact with them is daily for me. So thank you again for asking this question. The reason why this makes me so excited when people ask questions is because you're curious. Curiosity leads to knowledge. Knowledge leads to wisdom. So always be curious. Always ask these questions. That is a magnificent question. This is a great question because you can swap out parents, which this viewer is asking me about, her parents specifically. You can swap that out with my best friend who I've known since I was like a baby. Or you can swap it out with my husband. You can swap it out with my wife. You can swap it out with a spouse or whoever the case may be. This is something that everybody deals with, and it's one of those things where we got to quit looking at the differences and really realize that this question holds true to a lot of people out there. A lot of you deal with this, even if you're not in recovery. You're around people who you feel need to understand certain things because it's affecting your mental health. This is a question I get a lot, and you may agree or disagree with my response, but just know that my response is based off 5 years of sobriety, a lot of experience, not only with myself, but with literally thousands of people. With people in recovery, not in recovery, with people with mental health issues. I've dealt with this question on many, 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 many different occasions, and it holds true just in life what my response is. So, here we go. First off, I'll start off by saying, this question is the main reason why everybody needs to start practicing some form of meditation. See, when I'm answering this question, you gotta realize that I'm always trying to get to the root. See, what you see on the surface is really not the issue. This question is, here's all the issues. They're my parents, they live next door, they don't understand that they're triggering me. That's all just the little tiny things. And when I talk about the roots and why we always gotta dig deeper and get down to the roots, it's the same as chopping down a tree. You can chop off those branches all day long, but unless you dig that sucker up from the roots, those are just gonna grow right back. The root of this question is, why do you need them to understand for you to be okay? This is a question that we always have to ask ourselves. Why do I think I need this in order to be okay? Because this question manifests in a million different ways. Our brain says, I think I need money in order to be okay. I need this job in order to be okay. I need this relationship in order to be okay. I need this friend in order to be okay. What happens with all of us as humans is that this brain of ours, every single day, more and more information and experiences start storing in our memory. And eventually it gets cluttered. And our brains, they start forming in a certain way where our perception isn't always reality. So when we're talking about the family dynamic, we have been raised from a very young age, and this is something throughout history, thousands and thousands of years, millions of years, family. You have to have them. These are your parents. You have to be around them. Same thing with friendship. If you are a good, loyal friend, you will do whatever it takes to be there with that friend, around that friend, and everything that you have to do. These are all things that our brain tells us we think we need to be okay. So this is where meditation comes in. And just to let you know, a lot of this decluttering and this real clear vision of what our reality actually is comes from meditation. It comes from 12-step programs. It comes from therapy. And I'll let you know right now, for those of you who are just now meeting me, I am very, very open-minded about what you do for your personal recovery or your mental health. I will never tell you that one way is the best way. I'll tell you statistically, like what I've seen is better than others. But if you're someone in recovery watching this, I'm not going to say that you need to find a 12-step program to do this. My experience, that's what helped me declutter some of this stuff. Meditation has helped me declutter it even more. But you don't have to do a specific thing. You just have to do something. My experience comes with this cluttering from the fact that I always thought I needed certain things to be okay, and it was causing my misery, it was causing my suffering, and I kept chasing these things. And one of the best things I ever heard was, we can either accept it, change it, or eliminate it. And we gotta kind of go through that process. So my question to you is, can you accept your parents, your family, whoever it is? Can you accept these people exactly the way they are? If you can't, can you change them? So in your specific question about how you need them to understand, kind of what I was talking about in the last video where you asked this question, you can go and you can shove all the information in their face. You can strap them to a chair, duct tape their eyes open and make them watch videos about addiction. That doesn't mean that they will ever process any of this and fully understand. So one of my favorite dudes, my man Russell Simmons, in his book, Super Rich, I'm gonna start doing book reviews too, but he talks about the art of needing nothing. I fully believe from the bottom of my soul, from the bottom of my being, that the ultimate goal in life is to find happiness independent of circumstances. Regardless of what they're doing, I can find true happiness. That is my overall goal. That is just the finish line for me. When I can find that on a more consistent basis, I have won at life. So the reason why this is so important is because the people in your life may never change. So if you can't accept them, you might not be able to change them. The last thing on that list is eliminating them. And right now you're like, oh, Chris, I can't eliminate my parents. They're my parents. If you're in recovery, especially, like, I don't know about you, this is a life or death situation for me. And I have to look at it as such. For me, it actually is. I got sober with a 10% chance of living. If I relapse, I'm dying. That's the bottom line. But if you're watching this and you're in recovery, you have to look at your recovery as life or death. And here's the reason why. It makes every decision that you are going to make about your recovery that much easier. Because think about it. Like in the context of this question, if it was, okay, well, I cannot hang around my parents, or if I do go hang around with my parents, someone's gonna bust in and shoot me, right? Like that scenario sounds like, okay, well, I'm just not gonna go into that house, or I'll figure something else out, right? You have to look at that with your recovery too, because other people, when you're very vulnerable in early recovery, they actually have the power to kill. My personal experience with this, when I first got sober, just so you all know, I come from a crazy family. My family is nuts. I love them, but they are crazy. And when I was in early recovery, my family is one of my biggest triggers. When I got sober, I was immersed into the city where all my family is. And there was a time in my early recovery where my grandma invited me over to a family dinner, and I loved my grandma more than anything. But I had to take a step back, and I knew that if I put myself in that situation, I would leave very angry, upset, depressed, all these things that lead me back to alcohol or drugs. So I was able to ask a mentor of mine, I said, what do you think I should do in this situation? And he said to me straight up, he's like, if it's going to affect your sobriety, you can't go. He's like, and what purpose are you really serving there? Can you be of service to these people? Do you have anything good to bring? And I had to sit back and think about that. The reality was no. When my family starts fighting, I just jump right in the middle of that and I start fighting too. I had no purpose of even being there that would have a positive effect on anybody. So I avoided it. Now, eventually I was able to start going to these family functions again because I found my happiness independent of what happened with them. Now, I can actually be the voice of reason with my crazy family, and that's pretty crazy for a guy like me. But when it comes to parents specifically, the first thing is that answering this question, you need to realize that you are an adult child of an alcoholic or alcoholics too. I am too, and this has very specific symptoms. I highly recommend you pick up the book. I'll put a link in the description below. Those of us who are adult children of alcoholics have these specific symptoms, and they have very specific solutions. I'm going to do a series on that. But in my early recovery, just so you know, like, my mom was a drunk for 20 years, and she was 7 years sober when I got sober. But me and her relationship didn't just fix itself. That's not the way the world works. I still had a lot of resentments towards her, and I was maybe about a year and a half sober, and I was back in Las Vegas. I had a job, I had a girlfriend, I was seeing my son. Everything was going great for me, but for some reason, every time my mom and I talked on the phone, my day just went terribly. And I had to tell her, for my own personal recovery, for my own serenity, for my own sanity, I had to tell her. I said, I'm sorry, but I just can't talk to you for a while. I need to get some stuff together before we can have a good relationship. Now, let me tell you this. My mother and I have an amazing relationship today. Her and I are like best friends. Her and I have a relationship that I never even dreamed was possible. But check this out. From that time when I had to stop talking to her for a few months to now, she really hasn't changed. So what's that telling you? What that's telling you is that although she never changed, my perception of the situation changed. I learned to love, appreciate, and accept her exactly the way she is, which took me a lot of time. It took me a lot of work. So just keep that in mind. It is a lot easier for you to fix you than it is for you to try to fix the rest of the world. Because like I was just saying, regardless of what other people do, there's a good chance that they're never going to change. So by you changing yourself, getting right with who you are with on the inside, learning to be more loving, compassionate, strengthen your sobriety, you'll learn to accept people exactly the way they are. And it's a beautiful thing. I can show love to everybody on this planet regardless of what they think or what their opinions are. And my life is so much better than it ever used to be. So again, remember, when it comes to your recovery, it's life and death. When it comes to your mental health, same thing. Like, really put yourself first. You need to be the best you can be before you can be anything to anybody else. So I hope that answered your question. I hope you enjoyed this video. And again, bring on them heavy questions. I love them. Leave comments down below if you have questions about this topic, any other topic, anything regarding mental health. Like, just leave a comment down below. If you know somebody who's struggling with this same situation, please share it with them. Get that information out there. Maybe this video can help them. I want to build this community where we can help each other out dealing with these tough situations. So if you haven't yet, give this video a thumbs up if you want me to keep doing more of them. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you always know when the new videos are coming out. So this is Chris from The Rewired Soul, and I will see you next time.